2010s basically has influenced Bone Season in a big way, and in a way that I think is to its detriment. You can I mean, like what we're saying, it's aged a little bit poorly, and I think that's why we have to kind of view it as a product of its times. That doesn't mean it's immune from criticism, but I think we should understand that there's a reason the way that the book is like this.
So.
Uh-oh. Oh, fuck.
Yeah, so you made a great point. That you really do get sorted, don't you, Aaron? So let's take a quick quiz and see what kind of voyants we are, shall we?
Welcome to Mortified, the Friendship Quest, a podcast where two long-distance friends bounce media recommendations, all in hopes the other will like it. I'm Aaron.
And I'm a nice poltergeist.
And this week, we talk amoratics and authorial intent with supernatural dystopian fantasy novel, The Bone Season. Before we get started, remember you can help us on Mortified the Legitimacy Quest by subscribing to us on YouTube, iTunes, or Spotify, signing up for our monthly newsletter through the link in our show notes, or following us on Twitter and Tumblr at MortifiedPod. Leyla.
Aaron.
So, tell me how you first discovered author of The Bone Season, Samantha Shannon, and her various works.
Samantha Shannon wrote a thick-ass novel called The Priory of the Orange Tree in 2018. I do not remember how I came upon it. 2018 is kind of fuzzy for me. All I know is that it was 700 pages. I really liked the cover. And I wanted to read more fantasy. And so I started to read it. And it was basically, I describe it to people as like Game of Thrones-y, but if Game of Thrones was actually good. And, it's more like multi-ethnic and just more inclusive. The main characters are gay, which we love. It was so slow burny that it blindsided me. Like, I didn't realize that we were getting gay until we were in the gay zone, which was delightful to me. I really loved it, and I knew she had this other big series she was writing, but I didn't realize, like, I picked up the first 3 books for $2 on Kindle, and then just didn't read them for 3 years, and now I'm on a quest to read all my unread pile, and so I started reading these books, and I was like, boy howdy, can you tell that she wrote this when she was 19? How fascinating.
Yes, and I think that's probably going to be a lot of the discussion that we have about The Bone Season. But yeah, that's what you wanted to recommend this series, and we haven't done a book in a while. I think our last book was actually, the sequel to Six of Crows. What was that?
Crooked Kingdom.
Crooked Kingdom, thank you.
Damn, has it really been since the Crooked Kingdom?
I don't think we've been on a book in a long time.
Damn, audience, tell us books to read.
Yeah, seriously. But yeah, so this was an interesting one. I think that for a couple reasons, I want to preface, right, because of the conversations that we had with the Six of Crows series and how we came out really hard on the first one, and then we're like, oh, we shouldn't have done that. I will say that I did a difficult time giving Bone Season a generous read. One, because I was I had a bit of a stressful week, and also I was doing another long form thing with my other podcast, which I'll plug at the end. But I was just trying to cover a lot of content, so I a little bit skimmed. Not I wouldn't say skim. I read the whole thing, but I was kind of like trying to power through it, and to some degree that did impact my enjoyment. But we'll talk about it. But I do want to say, like, up front, these are the things that are biasing the way that I read this book, and so take whatever I say with a grain of salt, because I think there are definitely positives and negatives.
And on my end, I am 4 books into this series, so I am seeing it with the beautiful glow of improvement and where the series has gone now. So that is biasing the way I'm going to talk about these books, which I greatly am enjoying. But we will, we'll get into it. Aaron, speaking of getting into it, you want to summarize this beautiful novel for
my
us?
turn to do the plot summary in it. Okay. So, there is a 19-year-old girl in the year, I want to say, is it 20, like, 42 or something.
2040s, 2050s sounds
Yeah,
right.
it's in like the 2050s, basically. Paige, our protagonist, lives in dystopian Britain. And some things you gotta know about dystopian Britain is that, one, ghosts are real. And two, people who can interact with these ghosts are called voyants. Paige is a voyant. She has a special power that allows her to basically project her spirit out of her body and into other people's bodies, and that's cool. But in dystopian Britain, basically, all the people who can see ghosts, voyants, are hunted by the government, which is called Scion, and not like Zion, like the Zionist like Israeli movement, but Scion, like Scion. Should be very clear about that. But anyway, the evil British government, Scion, is hunting voyants, and three, the government is controlled by god aliens called Rephaites. Is that?
I think so, yeah.
Rephaites, who are... Here's the first thing that I had a problem with was that I could not picture them as the Shinigami from Death Note, unfortunately. I know they're supposed to be humanoid. I know they're supposed to just be like really sexy humans. I thought every single one of them was a goddamn Shinigami. I was like, that's not right. But I just kept thinking of them as like these terrifying alien monsters. But their whole deal is that they feed on the auras of voyants. And an aura is kind of like your... I mean, if you think of like traditionally like an energy that surrounds you, auras are sort of like that in this world, but they also allow you to sense other voyants, and some people can see them, and you can interact with them in fun ways. Those are the basic world building notes you should know. So basically, Paige, our protagonist, works for this crime syndicate, which is called the Seven Seals. But basically, there's a bunch of like really powerful voyants running around in London. But basically, one day, one of her, a job goes wrong. She gets caught by Scion, basically, the first time that she actually uses her power to kill someone. And she gets taken to Sheol 1, which, for all intents and purposes, is a concentration camp. So, yeah, this... content warning for a lot of stuff, which we will include in the episode description, but we're going to get fucking into it. And you can see why I'm a little bit sketchy or skittish about this book. But basically, they go to Sheol 1, which is a concentration camp for voyants that is in Oxford. The college, that's now a concentration camp, and she is imprisoned there. There, she is taken as a personal slave, more or less, by... one particular Rephaite who is Arcturus Mesarthim. We're just going to call him Warden because that's what he asked Paige to call her. And he's really powerful, and he is engaged to be married to, I believe it's Nashira Sargis, right? Nashira is the bad guy?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
And she runs Sheol 1, right? What's her deal?
Yeah, so she's like queen of the Rephaites.
Oh, so she controls all of the Rephaites then.
Her and a couple, like two others. It's like a three-way power split.
Yeah, like her family is the Sargises are like really powerful.
Yes.
But yeah, so she's like a big shot. And at first it seems like Warden is like a real dick to Paige because he's just like, oh, you have to obey everything I say. And, you got to do all these evil tests. And slowly, though, he teaches Paige how to use her psychic ability to throw her spirit out of her body, and like helps her become like pretty good at fighting. Paige also makes friends with like some people who are also in prison there, like the non-voyants, which they call Amerotics, which are just like normies. And Harleys, which are voyants who have to do circus tricks. That's why they call them Harleys, Harlequins. They basically just like dance for the Rephaites' entertainment. And basically she's just like, wow, I thought I had it bad, but these people are, living in squalor and are being tortured, and it sucks. So she hates that, and she's like, okay, I got to get out of here. I don't like this. But basically, it's revealed that Nashira wants to basically kill Paige once Paige has mastered her abilities. Her dream walking abilities is what they call them. And kill her because Nishira's ability is that she could take other people's abilities, which seems OP, but whatever. Nishira, I like Nishira a lot. I think Nishira might be my favorite character because she does have 5 guardian angels, which is really cool. But anyway, that's Nishira's whole motivation. And then basically what happens is that Paige and Warden save each other a few times because Warden, it turns out, was a part of like this other uprising during one of the previous Bone seasons. Side note, a Bone season is what happens every 10 years. They take all the Emerotics that have been imprisoned in London and take them over to Oxford. So they have a new crop of slaves, basically, to do labor to protect them against the Amim, which are big zombies. And that's their whole deal. But in the end, Warden and Paige learn to trust each other. They team up. They basically are able to take down Shield 1 and escape with a lot of the people who had been imprisoned there. Yeah, that's how the book ends.
Yeah, that was a pretty thorough summary of that lovely novel. I want to talk about our girl Paige Mahoney.
Yeah, let's talk about Paige. So Paige is 19. And she has a bit of Kaz Brekker energy in that she is highly competent, very deadly. She's not quite as self-serious as Kaz, which I kind of appreciate, but she is like somebody who at 5 years old was like taken to an Irish rebels meeting and like witnessed her cousin get killed in cold blood. So like has a sad backstory. Like is pretending to be working at like an oxygen bar, but is in fact doing all these like weird criminal things with her terrible gang friends. And like she has this whole secret life. Is very. I mean, Paige is characterized in a way that she's like very much like strong female protagonist. I don't think that's an unfair characterization. And again, this was written in 2013 when this sort of thing was a little bit all the rage. Think your Katniss Everdeen's and your whoever Shailene Woodley played in that movie. But like, she's of that type. I think she's a little bit more grounded and a little bit more competent. I feel like she's more confident in her skills and abilities, but also definitely has this like terrible dependent relationship with her boss, which sucks ass. And she's also in love with this 28-year-old Swedish doctor guy who saved her once. It's a lot, but that being said, I like Paige. She's fine.
Yeah, Paige is, there were moments in these books where I was reading and Paige would do something and there's this like honor student, holy shit, don't break the rule reflex in me where I was like, don't do that. Like Warden was like, don't touch me. And then she went and bandaged him up. I was like, he's going to kill you. He didn't, which was nice. But it's just, she's very, I think you nailed it. She's like of that like Katniss Everdeen era of female protagonists. But I will say, only for the first couple of books. She does kind of level out in 3 and what I've read of 4 so far. She's a delight. She's great. She's a mess, and I respect that. I respect a girl who's ready to be a mess for a cause. Warden. So, listen. I struggle with Warden a tiny bit because I love that he's mean at first, right? He's mean to protect her, right? He's Nishira's blood consort,
yes.
He's her fiance, basically. And
Yeah.
The reason he's her fiance is because he's rebelled against her before, so she tortured him and then bound him to her as a punishment, as like a show of power on her end. And he's just this like dark academia sad boy, which you would think appeals to me, and it does, but I cannot get over the fact that his girlfriend started out as his prisoner. Like, that still gets me a little, even though there's a whole novella of them being very hilariously domestic together, wherein he does make her soup, but because they don't eat food, he didn't know to spice it. So it was really bland, if well-prepared soup. And she was like, soup! And she didn't want to tell him because she felt bad. And then later he was like, I know you didn't like the soup. I wasn't, like, proud of making it. I was laughing at the fact that you were forcing yourself to eat the bad soup. Can you teach me how to use pepper? And she was like, fucking fine. So that shit gets me. I love that for them. But I do all the time think, she was your prisoner for a bit there.
Yeah. So I had actually started reading this a month ago. And I stopped at the point where she like passed her second test or whatever, and they literally branded her with a number. And I was like, Leyla, there is a lot of Holocaust imagery in this, and I don't like it. And you were like, you're not wrong.
You're not wrong. You have to remember, I ate these books in like 2 or 3 days, like 3 of them, because they all came in a pack for me, and I didn't know where one started and one ended. So I just kept going.
Wild.
So, hey, ADHD can sometimes be a weapon and not a hindrance. But yeah, the Holocaust imagery, thankfully, she does not make a return.
Yeah.
Her brand, I don't think her brand's been like brought up since. I think we're trying to quietly forget about it.
Yeah, no, I think you'll have a better insight into that. But yeah, like there is some age stuff. Like he's technically 200 or 1,000 years old. I don't know. He's old as shit, basically. So like, you know, there's that fantasy thing where like it's weird if there's somebody who is, you know, like literally 1,000 years old, but like at least they're not. I mean, I don't know. He does look like just like a human. He does look like a young human, so. It's not the thing in the most recent example of this trope is Fire Emblem Three Houses, where the one dragon lady, or I don't know, not that's the Pope, that's the Dragon Pope, but the one goddess shows up and she's like 1,000 years old, but she's also like a dateable option and she looks like a child. It's fucking gross. But anyway, like that's a trope, and I'm glad that this they don't lean too much into it. They don't bring up how much older Warden is as compared to Paige, which I kind of appreciate. She's not attracted to him because he's older, as opposed to her relationship with Nick, which I think is much weirder and bad, which we'll talk about here in a sec. But overall, like I do buy the relationship that Paige and Warden develop, because Shannon does go and take the time to, like, you know, they like Warden explicitly says like, okay, yeah, so I've been like invading your dreams and reading your thoughts, and I know all your memories. And then Paige is like, hey, what the fuck? And she gets really mad. But then he's like, okay, so in order for us to trust each other, I'm just going to let you, you know, invade my mind. And if you'd like, you know, you could theoretically just like explode my brain. I don't think you're going to do that. But I'm going to give you that option. And like, I thought that was very good. There's a moment where he like ties her hair, and I think that's a very nice moment. And I do buy the relationship between them, but there are some impediments with a capital I that cannot be ignored.
Yeah, again, this was written by a 19-year-old who planned a 7-book series, and this is one of those areas where you can really feel that. But it's okay, I do like Warden. I don't love Warden, but I do like him. Jackson Hall. Jackson Hall's a character with a capital C, am I right?
I basically hate everybody who's in the Syndicate. I haven't met any of them in. So this is already getting into like how the book is written, but like we don't see Jackson Hall like in the current timeline of the book, except for like maybe 3 chapters. The rest are flashbacks. This book is very flashback heavy, often alternating between Paige in Shale versus Paige back in her time in the Syndicate. And I don't think that's necessarily a storytelling foible, right? But it does show kind of like it is kind of a weakness to lean on that kind of storytelling, unless you're doing it intentionally and trying to be like, okay, here's the first half of this story, here's the second half, and this is where they converge. Like, I think it is weird just to be like, I have to keep using flashbacks to fill in all the context for why this character cares about these things, as opposed to just starting from the beginning where the character would have cared about the things and then going forward. But like, maybe that's not the kind of story that Shannon wanted to tell, and I completely get that. But I do think it is the mark of a writer who is a little bit inexperienced. I think that, right, so like her relationship with Jackson is like maybe the biggest example of that, because she is constantly like, oh, I have to protect the Seven Seals, I have to protect Jackson, you know, he'd be so mad at me, I gotta do all these jobs for him, you know, he's gonna be so disappointed, I wonder if he's missing me. Well, like the whole time, you know, I think Shannon consciously shows us that Jack sucks shit. He fucking sucks. Like, there's a scene where they're like, hey, we're bringing in some of our new gang members, and in order to do that, we're basically just going to shoot spirit energy balls at them for like hours and hours and hours. And it's just like, why does anybody work for this guy? Why don't they murder him straight up? Because he seems like he sucks. And I don't like him.
About like midway through the week, I did send you, I think this boils down to this, so Samantha Shannon's on Tumblr. You can like go ask her questions. She's very receptive, very, very like nice person to talk to. And she did, somebody asked her if Paige was assaulted in the book, and she is. It's not the worst kind of assault you can think of, but you know, it's very graphic and it's not fun to read. And with regard to that, Samantha Shannon said that if she had written Bone Season now, obviously it would be different. And I think that speaks to both the structure of it, considering there is a prequel novella she ended up writing. I think maybe more of that would have been included in the first like installment as like a real portion of it. And that's me speculating. And then the other thing she said was that, you know, Paige displays a lot of like internalized misogyny. And there was a lot of things she wrote that were things she thought were supposed to be in fantasy. So like, if you're writing fantasy, a woman's going to get assaulted. That's just like a part of the genre. And I think part of that is having like a shitty boss too, because I don't think there was enough, there wasn't really like thought put into like, oh, like why would she stick around except out of fear? Because it's just like what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to write a shitty boss and like a found family. I like Jackson's theatricality a lot. He's very weird. And I like a weird dad, like a weird dude. He's just odd. He listens to like classical music, he smokes cigars and drinks absinthe. Like he's very much a caricature of a mob boss, and it's kind of on purpose. I think he gets deployed better in the later books because he gets worse.
Interesting.
Yes, he gets so much worse, and I love it. He's a very convincing antagonist.
Yeah. I just, again, to make the Kaz Brekker comparison, I think he is Kaz Brekker without any of the heart, right? Kaz is kind of like a shitty boss of a you know, crime ring, but he cares about the people that work for him. Whereas I didn't see anything that suggested Jax gave a shit about anyone except for himself. So I, you know. Well, maybe we'll see, but like that's, I mean, it seems like that's the point. Yeah. So like,
and no, he does not give a shit about anybody but himself, and it gets so much more obvious, and it gets so much more like, I don't know. I think that one of the reasons I wanted us to read this book was because I did end up reading 3 of them, and I thought it would be very interesting to come in without you having the context of the other 2, because Samantha Shannon improves as a writer at like a breakneck pace. Each book is better than the next by a wide berth. And like, again, I found her through the Priory of the Orange Tree, which is one of my like top 5 favorite books of all time. And the only reason I have not tried to get us to read it for this podcast yet is because it is 700
pages. Yeah.
Yes, we are not able to do that as adults. So, you know, it's so interesting even looking back between books, because like, there is such a quick maturing of like both the deployment and the ideas that she was throwing around. And the thing that made the Bone Season, with all its flaws, compelling to me was that she was throwing out so many ideas. Like there was no, even if they relied on tropes of the genre for the time, like it's still like, London's a citadel, and there's god aliens, and everyone's, there's clairvoyance, and ghosts, and sometimes the ghosts possess people, and they can do paintings really good. It's, like, wild, and it was so much fun to read, because I'm like, wow, this is really a 19-year-old just saying, like, yeah, fuck it, no, we're going for this. And I'm committing to 7 books of this, which is incredibly bold. I love that for her. But yeah, Jackson sucks. So aside from the age gap, how do you feel about Nick?
I mean, he seemed nice. He's a doctor who saved Paige the one day when she was getting attacked by a poltergeist, I guess. And like she like fell in love with him as a very young child, and you know he's like been with her for many years. He seemed nice, but like in offense, like he serves the role in this era's like love triangle as the soft boy who, you know, is like your childhood friend who is always there for you, and I don't know that he has much of a personality outside of the personality that Paige projects onto him. And if that's intentional, I think that's very interesting. But I do think that just because there are so many other characters Shannon has to juggle here, I do think Nick comes off as kind of being a little bit one note. I do think it's a interesting and smart maneuver to have him like accidentally reject Paige, like, you know, in her like her darkest memory, basically the one that she shares to show Warden he can trust her. Like when she recounts the story of him like revealing that he's actually in love with this other guy, and then her having this full-blown meltdown because she's like, oh yeah, he never gave a shit about me, or not never gave a shit about you, but like he was never in love with you. And like that, I think that is smart and interesting. Besides that, I think he is just you know, a love object that I feel probably will almost certainly get fleshed out in more books. That's why you have other books. But for this first time, it was just kind of like an idealized love interest, and you know, he is fine.
Yeah, it's interesting. Again, it's interesting to see how these characters get lived in, because you get Nick in like a present day interactive sense, and he becomes a much more like. He's a little withdrawn. He's a little, he definitely cares about Paige, but he's very practical. He's very like, he borders on anxious sometimes. He's very kind of a nervous man. So yeah, but it is, I think, a good move to have had him reject her on accident, because he never saw her as a love interest, which makes the unrequited love on her end less uncomfortable for me, because
I agree.
Like, you know, listen, kids, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know, this is making a wild assumption, but there were definitely people in my high school who were like, oh, this really young teacher is super hot, and they were all like 17 and 18, and I was like, you know, that's not a great age difference, but like, you know, they're your kids, you're gonna crush on people who are older than you, and like, it's the responsibility of the older person to reject those advances, and like, you know, but like, I agree that it is wise for him just to be like, oh, I was never even thinking of you as a love interest.
We had a math substitute when I was in 10th grade, a long-term math substitute, and deep dark secret, I used to pretend to have crushes on the people all my classmates had crushes on, just so like nobody would ask any questions about like why I wasn't interested in a lot of boys at the time. I just like came into it late, like I didn't really care. And so I'd be like, yeah, super hot. And you're so right. They were not. They were fine. Certainly not my type of person. But, God, everyone had such a crush on him. And all the girls would be trying to flirt with him in math class. We were sophomores. So we were 15. He was definitely 28 at the time. So, like, yes. That shit happens all the time. Because when you're, you know, for between the ages of, like, 15 to 19, you just have protagonist syndrome. You know what I mean?
That's extremely true. Yeah. You're not the protagonist. Just listeners, if you are, you know, in your teens, I don't know that anybody who listens to us in their teens, but if you are in your teens, you're very important. Don't get me wrong, but you should not behave in the way that a protagonist of a YA or any novel behaves, because that's no good.
Aspire to be a featured NPC.
That's the way I live my life every day.
Or, hey, listen, if you scientifically can prove to me that you're the protagonist and I should just, like, retire to full NPC-dom, let me know. Make my life easier, okay?
Yeah,
So
I'll sell you rare items or some shit. It'll be cool.
Yeah, I'll be a baker. So write me a love letter to Nashira Sargis.
Nashira Sargis is, she's a mean woman, so already, cool points. She is described as being, like, looking like a Daisy, which I appreciate, because this is from what I can tell, a very English person heavy book. I mean, all the prisoners are being taken from London, so a lot of them are white people, presumably. I'm just glad that there's more. I want more mean Daisy women in media, frankly. But I mean, like, she's just, like, really cool. She has, like, cool powers. She kills people, like she gets her angels by, like, murdering somebody and then, like, binding them to her, and, like, that's really fucked up. And she, I love a unrepentant, angry woman who's just like, I'm gonna torture this man who betrayed me. That's just what feminism's about, basically.
Yeah. I'm a person who does a lot of shit out of spite. I'm most of my, like, career and personal advancement has been out of spite. The confidence it requires to bind 5 angels and 1 other alien demigod that hates you to spite their spite, that's admirable. That is feminism, Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that energy for her. I'm trying to think if there's any other characters of note that are, like... There's a couple other, like, smaller characters that are important. So, like, Liz is one of the Harleys, and Paige gets really attached to her, and, they kind of help each other out a lot. There's this cool old man who runs an apothecary and just, like, blackmails everyone constantly. Love that energy for him. And there's a couple other, like, Rephaim who are either Sargises, or you kind of learn later on that some of them are sympathetic to the rebellion, and so there's a wide cast of characters, a lot of people, but the 5 we covered are kind of the biggest pieces on the board there. Do we want to talk about how 2013 this book is? I feel like we've
alluded to it, but, like, again, right, this is like, dystopias were, like, such a huge thing. I think we could probably cite that Sarah Zed video that talked about the era of teen dystopias. But, like, like we said, Hunger Games, Divergent, the post Harry Potter era, essentially, where we have a bunch of, like, young women, trying to overthrow governments, right? And that's cool. We love overthrowing governments. But, like, it was still kind of in this era in the ways that we talked on the internet, where, like, Tumblr had not, like, fully hit full social justice warrior, like, when Tumblr becomes, quote unquote, like, the place where all the SJWs go or whatever, right? We weren't having this conversation about like, the ways in which media should portray people and behave in the same way online, or at least I'm sure they were. Like, I don't want to generalize, but, like, people who were probably Samantha Shannon's age at the time she wrote this. I mean, when I was in 2013, I was also 19. Okay, I didn't.
Are you okay?
No, I didn't realize I'm Samantha Shannon's age. That sucks.
Yeah.
But, like, yeah, like, I was certainly not a very progressive person in 2013, despite being, somebody who, wanted to be, wanted the best for marginalized people. I think that's a project that we have to go and work on every day. But, like, I did not have the language in the same way that I do now, just because of the circles that I run in. And I think that, like, you could see where you leaning into things such as the ways in which Shale is very, like, horrible, where this is a place where, people could be, tortured, and, you are put into your caste based on your jacket, right? Like if you're a red jacket, you're like the cream of the crop. But if you're like a yellow jacket, that means you ran and you're you're gonna get fed to the zombies or whatever. Right, it has so much of that DNA of that, like, sorting, like, based into your class, because there's also amorotics, or not amorotics, but voyants also have like a million different categories of like what they are. So it's like, okay, you could be X type of voyant, and I don't think Shannon does that as much here, right? I don't think it's the similar to Divergent, where it's like, okay, here's 5 different types of like, house you can be in, essentially, and like, custom made for a BuzzFeed personality quiz. I think that Shannon kind of is not writing for that audience, but you can see that there's a lot of that DNA, and you can see that there's a lot of like grimdark stuff that comes over from that that late 2000s era. And I shouldn't say that grimdark is a thing of the past, right? I love the Poppy War, which is a very grimdark series, but you can definitely tell so much of the media that we were talking about in the early 2010s basically has influenced Bone Season in a big way, and in a way that I think is to its detriment. You can tell, like what we're saying, it's aged a little bit poorly, and I think that's why we have to kind of view it as a product of its times. That doesn't mean it's immune from criticism, but I think we should understand that there's a reason the way that the book is like this.
So,
oh fuck.
Yeah, so you made a great point. That you really do get sorted, don't you, Aaron? So let's take a quick quiz and see what kind of voyants we are, shall we?
Okay, well, first published anonymously in 2031. Great. The first question is, which Hamilton character do you identify most with? Okay.
The fourth question is for us specifically.
Hell yeah, there we go. We got the Six of Crows reference. Fucking right on the money. Right on the money. 100%. Okay, I've got mine.
All right, so do I. Aaron, what kind of voyant are you?
So I'm an augur. In life, you sometimes feel underappreciated and unrecognized for your talents and abilities. You're generally easygoing and don't stress over messes, but you like the details as opposed to the big picture. Augurs use elements to read signs, and I guess they're divided into common and vile classes, which is very funny. Augur auras are blue. Blue is my favorite color. Yeah, I guess I'm an augur.
I'm a jumper. I'm overflowing with potential, whether I always feel that way or not. I can be persuasive. And apparently I'm the highest of all the orders. Look at me.
Wow.
I can affect and enter the aether without using objects or elements.
So you're a Paige. Yeah,
Paige.
Congrats. You fucking nailed the protagonist.
Yeah, so maybe I am the protagonist. So feel free to sell me rare items, Aaron, whatever you want.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, delightful. But you're right in that this series doesn't really lean on those categorizations as much. And I think one of the really clever things that Samantha Shannon did was the publishing of the 7 orders, or whatever the fuck, Jackson's pamphlet on the merits of unnaturalness, which Samantha Shannon actually published, and if readers, if you're interested, you could go actually read the pamphlet that Jackson wrote on the merits of unnaturalness. When it was published and it described the orders of voyants, was let's say deeply upsetting to the way things were being run. So the way voyants, the introduction of categorization to voyant culture was an upset in a bad way. So I thought that was very interesting. An interesting take on the trope of the time.
Yeah, no, it's nice to be actually everybody hates being categorized because it sucks shit, which is nice considering the media that was coming out with. But yeah, and also we've alluded to this before, but Shannon, right? I can't speak to the quality of the other books. This is the only Samantha Shannon book I've read, but like I wouldn't be surprised that the type of writing, both the quality and the ideas that are coming out and the ways that they are deployed, improved, because like. This book does one of the things that I hate in fantasy, which is like, here's a bunch of nouns, and none of the nouns are going to make fucking any sense to you. You're going to have to read the whole goddamn book for you to understand half of them. But like, especially in the first act, it's just like, here's all the orders of Voyants. Here's all the different street names in fucking Sheol 1. Here's all the buildings. Here's a bunch of characters that you don't have any context for. And like that always, I struggle with that, because it's like, by the end, I don't know. Like, I was getting various characters confused. And again, I read, 60% of this book over the course of 3 days, which, for me is quite a lot. So that is definitely, could be a flaw on my end as a reader. But like, I did find that there were some characters who just didn't have strong enough characterization, like Julian. I think he was a friendly bone grubber, the red jacket, right? But like, maybe not, because there's also another one. Maybe no, Michael was the Amerotic who was nice, and there's also somebody who was like an agent of the government, the English government. Like, there's a bunch of just like rando names that got thrown around, and because life is so nasty, British, and short in Sheol 1, like, some of them got whacked pretty early, and I was like, well, I'm not going to remember. Like, Seb, for instance. I thought it was very strange, the emphasis that they put on Sebastian, who was a normie character who gets killed in the first act, and, like, comes in at the very end. Like, Paige has to calm his spirit in order to get through this lock. And like, I don't understand why Seb was so important to Paige. I think that some of the relationships that she forms with various people here are there's a little bit too much emphasis on them. I don't really buy that Paige would care about them as much as she seems to. But yeah, I mean, you could tell that this is a product of somebody who doesn't have that much experience writing. That's not to say that Samantha Shannon isn't talented. I think this is a very well-written book, as far as, like, if you were 19 and writing this book, that's pretty darn good. It definitely has some amateur moves in it, but those are moves that I, as somebody who's been trying to write professionally for 4 years, still make. Right? There's a lot of use of the passive voice. But like, you know what? I think more people should just say, and then this was like this. If we could all use was more, I would appreciate that in writing. But yeah, I think, Leyla, you could probably speak to the ways in which, Shannon's writing has developed over the course of, several other books.
Yeah, I think if Samantha Shannon is the master of anything, it's the master of just, like, continuing to write more. Like, she has pumped out 4. She's working on the 5th Bone Season book out of 7. And she's concurrently working on a prequel to Priory, which is about as long as Priory, which is another 750 pages, which I will be reading. Thank you, Ms. Shannon. I think that's as an artist myself, like, you just have to keep practicing, and then you'll get it. And I think, 19-year-old Samantha Shannon never for once, like, stopped writing. Obviously you should take breaks, and sometimes you have to put things down and walk away from them. But Samantha Shannon, our age, has been writing consistently for, those 9 years. And again, I found her through Priory, which she wrote 4 years ago. And, like, I did not think I was going to have the energy to make it through a 750-page book. I think I did it in 2.5 days. Like, I truly just sat there and ate it. It is she's really got a beautiful way of world building. She's really gotten the pacing down. A lot of the character relationships are so much more fleshed out, and she's much choosier about the way characters relate to each other now. Like, it's not like Paige is just, trying to get to know everyone all at once. And, the relationships have really scoped down, and the worlds have really scoped up, and I think it's a really nice balance, instead of there being kind of a lot of everything all at once. But again, like, I really wanted this to be a study in an author's, like, first published book, because, if there's anything I've kind of learned over the years, it's that anyone can get published, anyone can be a professional creative if they just like work hard enough and don't give up. Like the only time mathematically that you will not succeed at something is if you stop trying. Mathematically speaking, you will find some success if you just kind of keep going. I am a testament to that. I have never stopped trying once in my life, and I am doing all right at this point in my life.
I want to... Publishing is a little bit different. Samantha Shannon got this book published because she got hired by a literary agent.
All right.
So, well, like, listen, I'm not saying that she's not talented, but she had an in, and that does change things.
It does change things. And I mean, I'm not saying it's not equal parts luck and perseverance, because it is, but you have to be persevering in the craft in order to get lucky. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's what I'm talking about. You have to keep going, and it is a much higher... You have much more luck with getting lucky if you keep trying, and not if you passively wait. You know, I am a testament to getting lucky, is what I meant. I have been in the right place at the right time, because I have not given up on trying to be in the right place in the right time.
I just don't want to give anybody the illusion that the publishing industry is fair.
No industry is fair. Yeah, let's get that out there.
That's
not
fair.
A single. I come from the visual arts, not a fair industry at all. Yes, no, I'm not trying to be naive here and say if you can do anything if you keep trying. That's the world is a cruel and strange place. But if you keep pushing, the chances of you finding an opportunity are greater than if you don't. Right. So the thing, it is a study in somebody being at the right place at the right time, having an in, and then keeping it up and really like dedicating time into like really improving their craft in a very visible way. And I think the reason I wanted to talk about this is because we talk a lot about like high budget, high production value things on this show, and it's not that this book isn't, but I think as we've been doing Mortified more and more, I think we've gotten nicer about the way we talk about things, because we have a much greater sensitivity to the like human element of creating something, and you know, it's just nice to like look upon somebody I already know has improved, and who has improved just by way of like getting bigger and bigger book deals, though that's not always a testament to improvement, but you know, sometimes. In this case, I would say it is. I just wanted it to be like a case study, like a little bit of a time capsule, not to necessarily a period of time in writing, though it kind of ended up being that, but to a point in somebody's authorial career, because it's interesting. It's interesting to see how people... some people are determined to improve their craft continuously, and some people just kind of do their same old thing and just keep trying to beat a dead horse while it still coughs up money.
Stephen King. Anyway. But I think that's also an interesting point, because like not only has Shannon been able to, you know, develop her craft, but also she's been able to look back and say, you know, I made choices in that book that I wouldn't make now, you know, specifically with that sexual assault scene, right? And I think we talk a lot about how, like, authors, you know, this is death of the author conversation coming up, but like there is, you know, I think that is completely valid to look at a piece of media and say, you know, without reading anything else, if you take it as an isolated piece, you have to say, okay, here are my criticisms of this piece. Here's what I liked. Here's what I didn't like. I think that it is a valid way to read media. But I think also if we are, as, you know, quote unquote critics, you know, going to look at a piece of media, we aren't afforded that, you know, we aren't afforded that, period. Because like, if the author is still talking, I think we do have to include some of that in the conversation. And like, you know, the most famous example is, of course, turf Rowling being, you know, making Dumbledore retroactively gay, and like that not showing up in any, not only does it not show up in the books, but it doesn't show up in any of her subsequent media, right? I think that's something that you can absolutely criticize. And I think that this is kind of the opposite of that, where it's like, okay, instead of I didn't make a choice, it's I did make a choice that I would not do again. And I am presuming that there's not a whole lot of objectionable content like that in future books. And based on your enjoyment of them, it seems like there isn't. And I think that is a really good thing. Like, I think that there is a lot of stuff about how like authors tweet too much and, they can hurt themselves by tweeting as opposed to not tweeting. But I think there is a lot of good that can come from an author looking at a piece of criticism, especially, a couple years after their media is released and being like, you know what, this piece of criticism that I'm receiving now does apply. And I'm glad you brought it up. And I do like that. I am glad that we are able to have those kind of conversations. We have that accessibility to authors, that because it does allow for, if everybody is being cool, right. The counterpoint to this is, fucking Andrew Hussey, who, if you listen to the Homestuck Made This World podcast, like still cannot, even 10 years after Homestuck came out, cannot adequately respond to criticisms of their media. But like, it is kind of nice to see authors, like making clear what their stance is on various pieces of criticism, so long as they're, not being weird about it.
Yeah, exactly. So, shout out Samantha Shannon, thank you for your cool books, and thank you for being chill and focused on growth. We love to see it. It's admirable, I think, especially in the sense that I know for sometimes I am afraid to show growth, because by showing growth, you admit that you are once wrong. And it feels like a risk to do that sometimes in the internet age. But I'm glad to see she does it very openly, and that she limits her exposure to, like, she's not on Twitter. She's on Tumblr, which is a much nicer platform. If you curate your audience correctly, which I think she has. Even like S.A. Chakraborty is not really on Twitter as much anymore. And R.F. Quag is extremely on Twitter, but in a fun way. We've talked about those authors before. So, yeah, it's good. I am sad you didn't enjoy this book as much, though I can see why you didn't, and I wish that I hope that in the future we can find something that throws around ideas this loosely, that is maybe written by a more experienced or like a more mature author, just so we can kind of get a taste of something just fresh and cool and funky that doesn't warrant a discussion of, a 19-year-old's internalized misogyny.
The book that I'm most comparing this to is Jade Legacy by Fonda Lee, which
right.
it is not a fair comparison, right? Fonda Lee's Jade Legacy is a book that was written by, a mid-40s woman with, several published books under her belt, as opposed to, poor Samantha Shannon, who had, this is like her first ever published book at the age of 19. So like, of course, I think Fonda Lee on a technical level is the best, fantasy author currently, on the market. So like, it's not a fair comparison. And I want to be clear, there are definitely aspects of this I liked. Like, I really want to see more Shaman King ass, like ghosts, using ghosts as like spirit energy. I think that's a really cool world building thing. If they hadn't all been chunked together, I think I would have liked a lot of the ways that the Voyant stuff was deployed. And then I do kind of like the, we're gonna do XCOM but with ghosts. I think that's really fun. So like, I am coming down pretty hard on this, book in specific, but like, I'm not saying that this isn't a book you shouldn't read. I think this is a very interesting book, and like we've been saying, I'm guarantee it'll be worth the payoff. One thing that I was floored to learn is that this is a part of a 7-book series, and like, we talked about this with One Piece, but like, Leyla, can you think of anything that you would want to put, she's probably going to have written 1 million words in this series by the time she's done. And like, I cannot think of anything. I loved some of the stuff that I've written over the past couple of years. I can't think of something I'd write 1 million words about.
7-book series, and don't forget the 2 novellas don't count.
Oh my lord. Yeah, exactly.
Seven main books in the series, and then she released 2 novellas. One, the prequel that we mentioned earlier, and the like fun. Well, I won't say fun. It's Paige recovering from some pretty intense torture, but the kind of domestic moment her and Warden get to have in France, I believe. Yeah, it's an interesting series, right? Because the first book is a prison break, the second book is a heist, the third book is... Her second book is a gang war. One of them's a gang war, one of them's a heist. I'm getting them mixed up in my head. But each book has like a fun new thing that it does, and I like that a lot. But no, I can't imagine committing to something so hard. And I admire that. My brain is too small and too smooth to do anything like that. Same thing with Priory, because she talks about her Priory series on her Tumblr, which I will link in the description. But, you know, she's saying that she made this 740 some odd page book, and now she's going to be working backwards in time, and then eventually, like, the Priory characters will make, like, a reappearance. I'm like, that's insane. That is unhinged. I cannot believe you are committing. I'm glad you are, because I like the series, but holy shit, that's so much power. I couldn't be tasked with that level of responsibility.
No, that's wild, and you know, I do wish her all the best, because that's tough. That is tough to be able to take characters that you know been working with. I guess, you know, it's been 9 years since Bone Season was published. I can't imagine like taking those characters over the course of 9 years and just being like, I have to say something new about them. Like, they have to go through some sort of character arc here. And you know, maybe I would like to see how you do that over the course of 7 books, and see how you make your characters incrementally change and warp and turn into different people, especially once you get that level of experience of just like being under deadline for like a decade and a half, and like constantly having to produce that stuff. You know, I hope that she's doing it in a healthy and a safe way. But like, yeah, I think it would be really fascinating to see, you know, the maneuvers you have to make. I guess the problem is that, like, Harry Potter is my only touchstone for a series that I've read 7 books in, and, you know, that, it's, the well has been poisoned, so it's very difficult. It's very difficult to make those kind of comparisons.
On that note, have any more thoughts?
No, I mean, I think we've already hit like an hour of talking, which is always kind of what happens here in Mortified, is that we go, we didn't really like this media. Let's talk a lot about why. And I think that's great.
You didn't like this one. I'm over here in my fan corner.
That's true. That's fair. But I think that happens a lot. That happened with Undertale. That happened with, I don't know. I'm sure it's happened before. But, yeah. And also, listeners, sorry we missed last week. The reason that we missed last week was that I heard the song Muppet or a Man. I was like, oh wow, the Muppets 2011 is just like a really in-depth analysis of, you know, what it means to be biracial in America in the early 2010s, and it was just about the Muppets.
Good movie though.
It was a fun movie. You wouldn't have got this level of analysis, I don't think.
No, the conversation we had in 30 seconds was about the level of analysis you would have got.
Yeah. So that's why we missed last week. You know, sorry. We're usually pretty consistent. But I hope that this conversation, you know, was the kind of stuff that you come to Mortified for. So with that, Leyla, when we are not trying to either extract media analysis out of extremely shallow properties, or extracting a lot of analysis out of properties that are not shallow but are complicated, and maybe sometimes really had to have a struggling reaction to, where can we be found on the internet?
You can find me at LEYLSES on Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram. I just wrote an essay. I think I wrote 2 essays in the time since we last talked. One was called You Wrote It Gay Too, How to Write It Less Gay. That one's self-explanatory. I talk about writing compelling heterosexual romance through the lens of anime and season 2 of Love is Blind, as you do. And then I wrote another one just now that's called Elden Ring is Full of Helpers. Because I'm 40 hours into Elden Ring, and it is full of helpers. And I wanted to talk about the co-op system and why I love it so much. What about you?
You can find me on Twitter at AaronSXL, where I tweet about tabletop RPGs and health policy. I guess since this came out, I wrote an essay about Godzilla versus Kong, and how you could use set pieces in your either your writing or your tabletop design. But I just really like the set pieces in Godzilla vs. Kong, and I talked about why. The day that this episode goes out, I will also have another tabletop review coming out for the tabletop game Disc Masters by Ethan Reynolds. Definitely a very cool, very like Yu-Gi-Oh! Pokemon, Digimon vibes. I really liked it. There is one big flaw, which I talk about in the video, but overall, I really enjoyed reading that book. Again, a flawed piece of media with a lot of stuff to dig into. So if you're interested in tabletop games, check that out. I am also on another podcast at The Bible Boys with my friends Josh and Michael, who are ex-evangelical siblings. We will be talking about the HBO His Dark Materials with Lin-Manuel Miranda in it, which is very funny. That episode should go up the Wednesday that this comes out. But yeah, those are all the places I can be found on the internet largely. Our theme song is Obsolete by Keshko from the album Filmmakers Reference Kit Volume 2. You can find more of their music at keshko.bandcamp.com. Leyla, how are we going to send our listeners out of Sheol 1 this week?
Go to hell, Aaron.
I already exist on a level of hell.
Then exist on one that isn't near me.
We'll see you all next week.